And I've been reading a question, or actually a series of questions from one of my guest viewers in, I'm assuming France. His name is Jean-Philippe. So Jean-Philippe, bonjour, je ne parle pas français très bien, mais not many people think I speak English very well either, so I'm going to go ahead and just give this a shot and do the best I can. You asked a lot of questions about the GoPro Hero 3. You were going to be doing a trip over to Iceland, and you were wondering if the GoPro Hero 3 would be a good choice over the Sony HDR AS15, which seems to have better image quality night and day and stabilization from other YouTube videos. I think you were the best person to give me advice. Well, I don't know if I'm the best person or not, but I'm going to try to give you my best advice about what I like about the GoPro Hero 3 versus the Sony. And I'm not experienced with the Sony, I just know what I've read about it. First of all, I think it only does 1080p 30, which is pretty good. It's awesome. I mean, that's been the standard for a good while. And it does have a 4x optical zoom. And if I were going to do a trip like what you're talking about and was thinking about taking an action cam, I still think I would take the GoPro Hero 3, and I would also, if you can afford to, I would take a standard camcorder, a smaller version of one too. For instance, most of the time when I go out shooting, I use like a Canon HFS20 or a Canon HFG10, which is a fantastic camera, good low light. If I were going the Sony route and was on a budget, I think I'd try the Sony HDR CX260V, I believe it's called, which does 1080p 60 frames per second, not interlaced, but 60 frames progressive, has a 30x optical zoom, which looks very impressive when I've looked at the things online. And then I would also take the Black Edition of the Hero 3 and do sort of the weird things that I do, which, you know, one of the things you may have seen on my videos is I'll take a golf ball retriever, and that's what this is, and I've put a piece of a noodle, one of these swimming noodle things. I can actually put a little mic handle that's with a screw on the bottom of it and screw that in there and put my GoPro Hero 3 on the front. Then I can extend this thing and go out like 16, 18 feet. I like to do a lot of video with the GoPro, stuff like this, to get angle, like way up high that I can't typically get. You know, so I do a lot of specialty things using something like this. And I also do this with my GoPro Hero 3. This is a little steady cam that I made. You can see I'm out of PVC. And you'll see here I've got 3 different mounts on the top. I'll take something like an HFG10 or an HFS20, and I'll put that in the middle, so I have zoom capabilities, good optical zoom. And then I'll put 2 Hero 3s on either side over here. And I recently did a video with my wife, and I'll post some of that as a visual for this video. But I've put a standard camcorder in the middle where I can hold it and I can actually zoom in with it. Then I've got another one, a Hero 3 that's shooting in wide mode, and one that's shooting in medium. And so that allows me to do some really cool things. There are 3 camera angles, really all shooting the same direction, but I can get a wide field of view, nice medium field of view, which is still wider than what this one gets, or I can zoom in really tight with the one that's in the middle. It's your more standard traditional camcorder. Okay, you asked what features of the GoPro do you prefer and what settings do you mostly use? 1080-60 or 1080p with 60 frames per second for inside and outside sightings, people, animals, or while moving. Okay, first of all, how great does the GoPro do in the dark? I don't think it's really anything special to write home about. You'll probably get better quality with the Sony for low light. But you know, I mean, is that one of your objectives, to be shooting in the dark? It may be dark up in Iceland. I'm imagining you're going to go at one of the times of year when it's a lot of sunshine, though. I'm assuming probably in the summer. So I'd say you won't have to deal too much with the light situation. What settings do I use? 1080p? Yeah, I like the 60 frame per second 1080p, especially if I'm driving. I don't know if you're going to be driving on some of this, if you're going to be riding in cars. I actually have 3 mounts on the windshield of my car. One that's right dead in the center, and I can put a GoPro Hero 3 shooting straight forward, one shooting to the left and right. And I like to do at least 48 frames per second, 1080p. 60 frames per second is fantastic. If you're going 60 miles an hour down the highway, you know, 75 miles per hour even, and you've got one point this way and one point that way, you can stop the frame and you can read what signs are saying. No motion blur at all. So yeah, it's fantastic. I love that aspect of the GoPro Hero 3. I very seldom shoot in 1080p 30. Now what you're going to go, when you go to convert and go on YouTube, YouTube's going to want the 30 frames per second. So I'm always, what you're seeing on YouTube is down converted to 30 frames per second. But I shoot in 48 or 60 frames per second because I want to be able to get that good stop action. And of course, you know what YouTube's doing is it's picking one of those frames to make, it's picking one of those frames to create the 30 frames per second. So a lot of my videos you can stop, even on the side views when I'm driving down the road on a tour and I'm going pretty fast, let's say 40 miles per hour, you can do a stop frame and you'll be able to read what's on the signs and see what's in the building and see expressions on people's faces as you're going past it. So I love the high frame rates. The only time I use the 720p, like 120 frames per second, or the 240 frame per second WGA setting, which is a sort of a standard NTSC, I think it is. Might be different, might be more like a PAL setting. But the only time I ever use the 240 frame, if I'm trying to slow something down a lot, you'll see some videos on my website of me shooting eggs or shooting a tangerine with a pellet gun and just watching the explosion of that. Or I like to shoot a lot of hummingbirds and try to slow their wings down so you can sort of see their flapping motion. I use the GoPro in that regard and those high frame rates to get those bits of good stop action type video. I'm not necessarily trying to slow things down. As a matter of fact, a lot of times I like to speed things up, especially my driving videos, but I love the fact that as I'm going by something in the peripheral vision, I can actually see, I can stop that and I'm not getting a bunch of motion blur, which you do get with any camcorder if you're doing 30 frames per second. Is Protune very hard to use or even necessary? Is the auto preset enough? You know what, I found out that the auto is really good. I have shot a good bit in Protune though because I wanted to be able to go in post and do some very specific sort of color grading. You know, if you've ever used Photoshop and you've shot, maybe a lot of times I'll shoot in JPEG and camera raw format simultaneously with my Nikon D5100 or D3200. And your JPEG, you'll open it up and initially it looks better than the raw file does until you bring it into camera raw in Photoshop and start messing around with it, and you'll figure out there's so much more you can do in camera raw. You such a high dynamic range of color and you can do exposure things. Well, that same thing holds true if you're shooting in Protune. However, Protune is hard on your editing software. I'm using a 6-core Xeon processor at work, and if I shoot, let's say 1080p 60 in Protune, the computer really sputters and has a hard time with it. I need to know that I've really got good video, so I do a lot of proxy editing. I create proxy files. I do the editing using those proxy files, which use up a lot less memory. Then I'll replace them with the Protune versions, and then, in other words, at that point, I know that I've really got good edits, and then I'll apply very excellent color grading. So you can bring things out of shadows better if you shoot in Protune, much better actually. It's almost like camera raw for a camcorder. That's sort of the correlation as to what you get if you compare it to Adobe Photoshop. So yeah, I think it's worth doing. I don't use it that much though. Most of the time I just try to make sure I shoot in good light and don't shoot into the sun and things like that. Sometimes I still do that, but I find that most of the time the auto is fine. If you know you're going to want to do some very cool, very precise color editing, then Protune's worth having. So I think it's a good option to have that. What do you think about the warm feeling of the image with the GoPro compared to the GoPro 2? Do you post-process the image so it's more natural? Yes, I do. Well, it depends. Sometimes I'm real satisfied with the color that I'm getting. Sometimes I think it leans a little more to the green or bluish, or sometimes it is a little warmer looking. Depends kind of on what time of day I'm shooting, what kind of light I'm getting. Usually what I do, now I edit with Adobe Premiere Pro CS6. And so even this piece of video I'm getting now, I'm shooting sort of toward the twilight part of the day, and the sun's going down over in that direction. So most of the time I will open up the piece of video, I'll put brightness and contrast on it and just monkey with it a little bit to see if it needs a little more contrast, a little more brightness. At this point maybe this video will not. Then I usually throw the fast color corrector on there. Now, I know there's like the 3-way color, it really provides in CS6 a lot more options, but I find out that still fast color corrector gives me 90% of the time what I need. And usually it's just a slight bit of tonal correction that I'll do. For instance, if the piece of video looks a little too orange or a little too blue, I'll pull on the color wheel, I'll go to the center and I'll pull it just the opposite direction, right? and it seems to most of the time balance it out pretty well. Then of course I usually put a little bit of saturation on there, sometimes 120%, 130%, as much as that. But I don't want it to look fake. Like, I don't want the flowers and things that you're seeing here behind me in my little garden to look fake. I really want to represent the true colors of what's there. So I don't try to overdo it. I just want to try to really recreate the color as I remember it in my head. Maybe just a slight bit more saturation. What about the image quality of pictures taken with the GoPro? Should I bring another camera for pictures only? Yes. Okay, I'm not a big fan of the photos you take with the GoPro Hero 3. Are they okay? Yeah, they're okay. They're 12 megapixel photos. How do they stack up against other 12? You know, I've got a 12 megapixel Sony Alpha 700 maybe. I think it's what I have. Now I'm using I've switched over to Nikon, but I think my A700 from Sony shoots 12 megapixel photos. If I compare those Sony 12 megapixel photos to what comes off of the GoPro, no competition. Sony blows it away. You know, the GoPro Hero 3 shoots decent photos. You're going to do some time-lapse stuff, yeah, pretty good. You know, like what I like to do, I like to shoot photos way up high on the stick, and I can't hoist an A700 40 feet in the air. I can hoist a very tiny little GoPro Hero 3 up there, so it's so small and lightweight. So I will shoot some photos and stuff with it if I'm trying to get odd, strange angles or perspectives that I wouldn't normally be able to get with a regular camera. But if you're going to shoot stills, I still take a really good DSLR, and I've made the conversion over to Nikon. I'm now a Nikon man. I'm loving my Nikon D3200, and I still use my D5100, which is, I think, 16 megapixels versus 24 megapixels. I do not think of using the 4K settings, but I'm interested in the stop motion features or taking pictures while recording a video and using the remote to manage the camera. It will mostly be fixed on my backpack shoulder straps. Okay, well, I'm sorry I had not read that far ahead. If you're going to be doing it on your backpack, wow, GoPro's really cool to do that. And yeah, if you're not going to use 4K, yeah, here's the deal with the 4K on the GoPro. I think it looks fantastic. And I've shot a good bit of 4K video because I know the 4K televisions are coming, right? Pretty soon, the 1080p TVs are going to be out the door. I'm guessing 2 years. I know that Sony's already putting out some really nice 4K TVs. So I'm trying to shoot some 4K video in anticipation of that. The problem with 4K on the GoPro Hero 3, as it is here in May of 2013, is that it's only 15 frames per second. So you're probably going to want your camcorder to be on a tripod or propped up on something, your GoPro. If you're going to get good video, it's still going to be just slightly choppy. I mean, yeah, you know what the difference in the 15 frame per second looks as opposed to 30 frame per second. So you're not going to want to, you know, to probably be trying to shoot motion video. Definitely, I mean, if you're going to like sit up and shoot a big horizon or landscape, it should look pretty good. And you can take those frames and export pretty nice looking images from that. But still, if I were going to be trying to get images, stop motions and stuff like that, I still think it'd be better to use your DSLR. And rather doing a stop motion, well, we're talking about stop motion for video. You know, I'm guessing that maybe you're shooting 4K. As long as you're on a tripod, or you have it, like, for instance, on top of a rock or something so that's very stable, you would be able to stop motion that. Even in 4K, I think pretty well. I think probably for what you're wanting to do, probably the 1440p setting would be really good. I like to shoot in that 1440p, which is actually 1080. It's 1080 wide still, but it's much taller, right? Sorry, 1080. It's still 1920 wide, but it's 1440 tall. That way I can make some decisions about how I'm going to slide the video around in the frame, whether it's up or down. The 2.7K on the GoPro is very cool to shoot in because it still shoots 30 frames per second. Am I right on that or wrong? I think that's correct. I think I can shoot 30 frames per second in 2.7. It might be 24. Can't remember. It's not committed to my memory. But the thing that's kind of cool about that is you can be shooting a video. Let's say you know you're going to be probably mixing down to 1080p at least at this point, right? So that it goes on YouTube because you know, YouTube really doesn't display the very high definitions, the 4Ks, 2.7s. You're going to have to go out to 1080p, right? So I use almost like a fake zoom. So I'll shoot in the 2.7K, which gives me a lot of extra pixels, and I'll size it down to 1080p. And I'll be showing a video, Then if I want to zoom in on something, I actually go to full size. I'll cut and I'll blow the video up to full size rather than sizing it down, and it looks like I've zoomed in. You know, it looks like I've got another lens that I've zoomed in on it. And so that's a nice little effect that you can do. You can do the same thing with 4K. You can size the 4K down to, since it's exactly it's exactly 1080p doubled, you can size it down. You can just scale it down to 50% in your Premiere or whatever you're using, Vegas, whatever you're editing in. You can be showing a video and then you want to zoom in to a 2 times mode. You just go to 100% and let it, the video go outside the field of view of the 1080p. It works really well. I will be renting a car to go across the island. Do you think it is safe to mount the GoPro on the bumper top of the car? Does the removal of the mounting leave traces on paint or on the dashboard inside the car? Okay, I did not want to put that thing on my paint, so I have not mounted any of them to a painted area of my car. I have mounted them to glass, and they stick like, man, it is like super stout, those mounts. So right now I have 3 mounting to the glass, and the only way you can get them off is to take a hair dryer and I mean, man, blow it really hot on there. Matter of fact, if you can get something that shoots hot air that's hotter than a blow dryer, a hair blow dryer, if you can get a heat gun of some sort, that is the way you'll get those off of glass. Probably, I've not done it. I can't really speak from experience as far as paint would go, so I've not tried that, but I imagine it could take the paint off of a car. And yeah, I just don't know that I want to heat it up, have to do that kind of a heat operation on paint. Might make the paint peel. It works really well though, just to make sure you clean your glass off. You maybe, like I have mine just mounted right square in the middle of the windshield, and then on the side of the windshield, the other side of the windshield, and I use the little mounting accessories that come with it to level the camera up so that it's not at some weird tilt. It works great. And you can get them off of glass. You just either have to scrape them off with some sort of a knife or something like that when you start to leave, or you're going to have to apply heat to get them to loosen up and come off. But that works great. And yes, it's totally safe to do it. I've been going down the road 80 miles an hour before with GoPros mounting to the top, and you make sure they're securely on there, but that glue is not going to come off. I mean, I can't imagine. I wouldn't do it in dusty areas where there's a lot of dust hitting the lens and stuff. I definitely wouldn't do it in rain unless you're inside the housing. I use a little thing called the frame, which is outside of the glass a whole lot, and I'll just actually do that, just so I get the most clarity that I can from that lens. What would I need for a full day of hiking, battery and SD card wise? I'm interested in the Smatry, however you say it, battery pack X2 and SanDisk Ultra 16 gig class 10 times 2. Would it be enough for mostly filming stop motion 30 seconds, pictures, cars, dashboard, low quality I guess? Would you suggest big 32, 64 gig SD cards or many smaller 16 gigs? Is there a heat problem with big ones? Okay, let me say first of all, I use 32. I use the SanDisk 32 gigabyte class 10s. They work fantastically. You'll get probably, I say you're doing 1080p 60, you'll probably get about 3.5 hours or so video on there. The batteries, I recently did a test on the batteries. Smatry's that I used held up pretty well, a little better than the Wasabis. Really almost as good as the native battery that comes with your GoPro Hero 3. So, depending on how much you're going to be shooting, if you're going to be continually shooting, you'll get probably about an hour and 20 minutes out of the GoPro or the Smatry battery. Probably about an hour and 5 or 8 minutes or so out of a Wasabi if you get that. Wasabi's a little cheaper. For me, a little less time, battery time. And I like the 32 gigs. That way you don't have to worry about having to switch them out so much. I carry them in a little, it's a little plastic case that I don't even remember where I got it. I have it out here to show you. I don't have it with me. But I did buy one of the 64 gig SanDisks, and it worked about 3 different times and then it died. I should have sent it back. I've not sent it back. Just haven't had the discipline to go pack it up and send it back. But my 64 gig did not last long. I don't know what it was. Maybe I got a defective one. Maybe they would be fantastic. As far as heat goes, you mentioned heat. This is something interesting. I don't understand the physics of batteries a whole lot, But when I use my Smatry or my Wasabi, I notice the camcorder itself gets hotter than when I use the GoPro battery. I don't know if that's something to do with the voltage or some, like I say, some physics or the transfer of energy. But it seems like the camcorder does get somewhat hot. It's not caused any problems or anything. It's not caused bad video or me to lose anything or a shutdown or anything like that. But I have noticed the camcorder gets noticeably hotter when I use those third-party batteries. So that might be something for you to think about. I hope that this helps. You know, the main thing, what do I really think is just so great about the GoPro Hero 3? I'll go over it one more time. Field of view is fantastic. Frame rate's fantastic. If you're going to be driving and you're going to put the car on the exterior, it looks great. If you want to mount it on the inside of your dashboard, be sure you mount it just low enough that you can easily slide the mounts in and out. I mounted one on the inside of my car so close to the top where the windshield meets the roof of the car. I mounted it so close that I couldn't get the mount out. It was stupid, but you know, you have to make sure that you turn it in such a way that you can do that. The GoPro Hero 3 allows you to shoot upside down. So if you want to hang the GoPro upside down from the inside of your of your windshield, that's what I like to do. Then you can hang it upside down and tell it to record the video upside down, so that when you go to edit, it's already automatically flipped and it's not a problem. Works fantastic, and I'll try to show you some little samples of that. So hopefully this helps. If there's any other questions you've got, thanks for the ideas. Thanks for the questions. It gives me a chance to talk to people about features of the GoPro that that I might have missed in other segments of my little blog. I think they're a fantastic little camera. I love working with mine. It has changed the way I shoot. I do not think it takes the place of a good quality camcorder that has a nice optical zoom on it. I think if you're going to go do what you're going to do over in Iceland, I would take both. I'd take a nice DSLR, a small camcorder, as small as you can get that's good quality. I do think that Sony HDR CX260V looks like a really great camera. And I would take all three of them. Yeah, the thing about the GoPro is it's so small. You'll find reasons and times you want to do it. You know what's really great about it? Being able to shoot inside a car. I think some of the coolest video you can get with the GoPros is put it on the dashboard. You get the field of view is so huge. Let's say you're riding down the road, you're talking with somebody, you're talking about the scenery. Maybe you're shooting some video through the windows or whatever of the car, or out the windows. Have the GoPro sitting in the dashboard or mounted to the inside of the windshield, and shoot some back at yourself so you can see your own the conversation. Maybe where you're talking with somebody as you go down the road, or you know, the reaction of your own self as you're experiencing the beauty that you're going to be seeing. And I envy you. It's going to be awesome going to Iceland. I hope you have a great time. Can't wait to see what kind of video you get. But yeah, the GoPro Hero 3 is awesome. It's a little aggravating. It's not. You're going to find times you get mad at it, but you're going to love the video you get off of it. And that's really what's the redeeming quality to me, is I can get aggravated by the fact that it freezes, or at least it has in the past before with the old firmware. A lot more it used to freeze. There are some idiosyncratic things about it. It's not a perfect camcorder. I'm looking forward to the Hero 4, which I understand may have, I think it's going to be able to shoot 4K video at 30 frames per second. Boy, is that not going to change things. Can't wait for that to come about. And we're going to be able to shoot, I think, 720p at 240 frames per second. Well, again, I'm sure it's probably going to come out at the end of the year. But for now, that GoPro Hero 3 Black Edition is very cool. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a nice little tool. It's not the do-all, end-all, but you will get some unique shots that you'll not get with any other camcorder, just because of the fact that it's very mobile, very small, shoots great field of view options, awesome frame rates. For driving, it's a must-have. I love the video I get when I'm moving with it. And so yeah, I think if you can afford to, take the DSLR. GoPro's not going to take up much space. Buy that too if you can, and then get a nice little camcorder that will shoot. I love the fact that Sony will shoot 1080p 60 frames progressive, not interlaced. So I'm shooting this video with a 60i with a Canon camcorder, so that's what you're seeing here. Good luck. Bon voyage. Hope you have a great time there, and let me know if there's any other questions you'd have.